There's a quiet paradox at the heart of K-pop. The groups that break new ground often pay the highest price for it. Few embody that truth more than KARD, a co-ed group that since their 2016 debut has achieved something rare: consistent international success without a single domestic music show win in South Korea. That fact alone isn't just trivia. It's a window into how K-pop's ecosystem rewards conformity, punishes experimentation, and often forgets the pioneers who made later success possible. KARD's story begins not with a bang, but with a calculated risk. In late 2016, DSP Media, the agency behind and Rainbow, launched an unconventional project, a permanent co-ed group with 2 male members, Jae-sef, and 2 female members, Somin and Jawoo. This was not a collaboration or a subunit. It was a full-fledged group in a format that had all but vanished from mainstream K-pop after the early 2000s. Groups like Sharp and Cool had found success in the late 90s, but by the 2010s, the industry had moved decisively towards single-gender acts. Even mixed-gender units like Troublemaker were temporary and heavily framed as performance art, not genuine group dynamics. Why did co-ed groups fall out of favor? The answer lies in K-pop's parasocial economy. Idols are marketed as idealized romantic partners. Your bias is someone you imagine dating, marrying, or at least daydreaming about. Introduce members of the opposite gender into the same unit and that fantasy fractures. Who are you supposed to ship? What happens if dating rumors emerge between members, something Korean media treats as career-threatening? This isn't speculation. It's been widely discussed in Korean press and academic analyses of idol culture. The result? Co-ed groups face structural friction in building the kind of obsessive, loyalty-driven fandoms that dominate Korean music shows. Yet KARD defied early expectations, not in Korea, but globally. Their pre-debut singles, Oh Nana, December 2016, Don't Recall, February 2017, and Rumor, April 2017, all charted on Billboard's World Digital Song Sales, peaking at number 5, and number 3, respectively. Rumor also entered the UK official singles sales chart, a niche but credible chart tracking pure purchases, not streams, making KARD one of the few fourth-generation K-pop acts to appear there at all. Critics took notice. Billboard included Rumor in its 25 Best K-pop Songs of 2017 list and highlighted KARD as a group to watch. But back home, the reception was muted. Despite their Hola Hola EP reaching number 2 on South Korea's Gaon album chart in July 2017, KARD never placed high enough in digital streams, broadcast points, or real-time voting to win a music show trophy. And they still haven't. As of January 2026, KARD holds 0 wins across all major Korean music shows. The reason isn't lack of talent, it's structural mismatch. Music show wins in Korea depend on a complex mix of real-time voting, digital streams, weighted heavily toward Korean apps like Melon and Genie, broadcast exposure, and physical sales. But KARD's fan base was never primarily Korean. In practice, their schedule leaned heavily toward international touring, with early stops in the US, Mexico, Brazil, Indonesia, and the Philippines, markets where their bilingual lyrics, rhythmic production, and co-ed format resonated deeply. Latin America, in particular, embraced them. Their sound aligned with local pop sensibilities, and unlike in Korea, there was no cultural stigma around male and female performers sharing the stage as equals. KARD became one of the few K-pop acts to consistently sell out mid-sized theaters and concert halls in cities like Mexico City and Sao Paulo, building a global fan base that valued live performance over parasocial fantasy. This created a feedback loop. Because KARD spent months overseas, they had less visibility on Korean variety shows and fewer opportunities to engage in the daily fan interactions that fuel domestic loyalty. And because they weren't winning music shows, Korean media gave them limited coverage, which meant fewer new local fans. It wasn't a failure of effort. It was a divergence in success models. KARD didn't fail Korea. They succeeded outside it so thoroughly that adapting to Korea's domestic system became less necessary and eventually less feasible. The pandemic only intensified this reality. With international touring halted from 2020 to 2022, KARD was forced to promote almost exclusively in Korea, a market that had never fully adopted them. Their releases during this period, like the Way with Words mini-album 2020 and Wartle single 2021, performed modestly on domestic charts. Their sound also evolved, moving away from tropical house toward darker, more experimental initial concepts. While respected by critics, these shifts didn't reignite mainstream Korean interest. Meanwhile, DSP Media, historically smaller in digital infrastructure compared to HiSem or JAPE, struggled to compete in the live stream-heavy, fan-call-driven idol economy that exploded during lockdowns. All of this created fertile ground for a fan-driven narrative that KARD was a pioneer who never got their due. And in late 2025, that narrative gained new energy, not from any statement by KARD members, but from online discussions comparing their journey to newer mixed-gender projects. In these conversations, KARD became symbolic, not of bitterness, but of the trade-off inherent in being first. Critically, no member of KARD has ever publicly criticized another group. In past interviews, BM, a fluent English speaker known for his candid podcast appearances, has spoken about the unique challenges of promoting as a co-ed group, but always with respect for the system, not resentment. He's acknowledged that KARD's path was unusual, even lonely at times, but also expressed pride in proving that co-ed groups could find audiences outside Korea. And that's the harder truth. KARD's legacy isn't about trophies, it's about proof of concept. They demonstrated that a co-ed group could tour internationally, chart on Billboard, and build a sustainable career without conforming to Korea's domestic idol playbook. In doing so, they quietly expanded what K-pop could be, especially in regions where music, not image, drives fandom. So why does this matter in 2026? Because K-pop is global now, more than ever. And groups that once seemed too risky for Korea may find their value recognized not in weekly music shows, but in world tours, streaming numbers, and cultural impact. KARD didn't lose. They just played a different game, one the Korean industry wasn't designed to reward. If this story changed how you see K-pop's hidden pioneers, consider sharing it, because the real history of K-pop isn't always the one they show on music shows.